The Eagle Spiritborn is a build that has easy leveling, it's super fast, and in my opinion, it's very, very fun. This is what I used to level up in Vessel of Hatred, and with very minimal gear, it carried me all the way through to Torment 1. With that said, it is still early days on the expansion. I have not optimized this setup. This is just what I've used so far, and what's worked really well for me. So, if you want to see a more optimized version that's built to withstand higher Torment levels, that's what I'm going to do next. Because I need to farm a bunch of gear, I want to try several builds on the Spiritborn, and to do that, I need to make sure this is solid so I can use it to farm. So if you want an updated version of a build, get subscribed, ring the notification bell. But if you're leveling right now and want a basic idea of a template to go off of, stick around as I'm going to go over the key mechanics, then move on to talk about things like the skills, mercenaries, gear, etc. So first up, the core mechanic of this build is the Eagle Spirit Hall primary. After you use an Eagle skill, which basically means after you use any skill, because the Eagle Hall primary says all of your skills are also now Eagle skills, you gain a Storm Feathers buff, increasing your movement speed. And when you evade, you fire feathers in a line, dealing a significant amount of damage to enemies and making them vulnerable. This is already really, really strong, but there's a few things that you can do to further enhance these effects and turn this build into a leveling and speed clearing monster. Unfortunately, all of this requires the Eagle Spirit Hall, which doesn't come online until you hit level 15. Before that, you can level with any core skill that you want. Personally, I found Crushing Hand to be the easiest, but if you've been trying something else and you're already comfortable with it, just go with that instead. Now, as soon as you hit 15 and enable the Eagle primary, congratulations, your build's online. But there's a few things that you can do to further optimize it, which is going to make the gameplay feel much better. The first of which is making sure your evade has as short a cooldown as possible. This is done through a couple ways. Number one, find boots that have the implicit attacks reduce evade's cooldown by 1 second. This way, as you're using your other skills and passively attacking, you're reducing the evade cooldown. Number two is by speccing into Thunder Spike and taking accelerated Thunder Spike. This way, as you evade through enemies, your Thunder Strike triggers, not only making them vulnerable, which is pretty cool, but also on every third cast, Thunder Spike reduces evade's cooldown by 5 seconds, effectively resetting it. Because the feathers make enemies vulnerable, if you can get the aspect of exhilaration, this is also a great way to get a ton of resets. But unfortunately, it's a drop-only aspect, so your access to it while leveling may be unreliable. With those things alone, the build should feel very fast and fluid. The single target won't be quite there yet. And so for that, I recommend investing into Quill Volley. This really starts coming online after you're able to obtain the Vital Strikes key passive and Accursed Touch, because normally, Vital Strikes removes vulnerable from an enemy. With your evade reapplying it, this isn't the worst thing in the world. But when you're able to use Accursed Touch to inflict Vampire Curse on enemies, Vital Strikes is no longer able to remove it. It technically removes the effect, but it can't remove a Vampire Curse, and since enemies are vulnerable when they're affected by Vampire Curse, they are simply vulnerable again right after Vital Strikes triggers, turning it into a permanent health and vigor battery. With this combo, you are now able to spam Quill Volley, adding significant amounts of single target damage. And last up, you can take the Rebounding aspect to cause the Quill Volley feathers to return, which means they deal even more damage and proc even more things. So all of this combines into a build that you can use to blast through dungeons, to absolutely crush the Undercity if you want to level that way, or to take part in Helltide and get all the cinders, since most of the time you simply evade through a bunch of packs until you encounter an elite or some other tanky enemy that you want to stop and kill. You stop, delete it with Quill Volley, pop some defensive skills, and then move on to the next target. And the best thing about it is, it doesn't require any unique items, and technically it doesn't even require any mandatory aspects. Yes, having Accursed Touch and Rebounding make the build feel much better, but at a baseline, especially if you just want to use it to speed clear, it doesn't require them, so you can start playing with it as soon as you hit level 15. So now, I'm going to go over all the skills, Paragon boards, a few limited Paragon boards anyway, Mercenary effects, Spirit Hall effects, and gear that I'm wearing currently. Again, remember, my character is a fresh level 60. I was able to do the Pit 20 to unlock Torment 1, so I'd say the gear is performing pretty well, but this is far from an optimized setup. Again, if you want to see a more endgame focused setup, get subscribed and maybe leave a like while you're down there to help promote this video in the algorithm. So first up, skills. And I'm actually going to go over everything in respec mode so that you can see the order things are allocated along with the allocations. First up, Thunderspike. You have to put 2 points into this regardless, but you'll want 3 very quickly. Then Quill Volley, and honestly you can either go with Rampant, which is a little bit more clear, or Advantageous, which is more consistent single target damage. I've played with both, gone back and forth. Honestly, I don't feel like the difference is big enough that it's really an important decision you should spend a lot of time on. Now from here, get Accelerated Thunderspike, and come down here to grab Soar for the additional Unstoppable. After this, you've got a couple spare points, where you need 2 more to unlock. You put both of these into Ravager, before also taking Counterattack. From here, Measured Ravager, that way you have additional resource generation and more mobility on your Quill Volley. Reinforced Counterattack for the crit. Come back up here, completely fill out Quill Volley. Get at least 1 point in acceleration, but personally I would say at least 2. And also at least 1 point in fueled. Both of these make the build feel much, much smoother, so I strongly recommend picking them up early. So after this, take the Hunter. This is your super giga move speed that feels really, really good skill. Now you kind of want to go back and start backfilling into various important bonuses. For example, a point into Focal Point to unlock Apex. You'll also want to put additional ranks into things like the Hunter to really get those bonuses up, and also unlock Vital Strikes. This is the point where I would say the build comes online at 34 points spent. From here, the exact allocations that you have aren't nearly as important. For example, Mirage is really, really good. It gives you dodge chance while evading and turns that into crit. That's great if you need defenses and damage. But, on the other hand, Intricacy allows you to reset and double cast skills. So if you find that certain things are on cooldown when you need them the most, you'd want to rush and invest into this instead. So let's exit respec mode, and you can see this is how I ended up allocating my trait. I put a couple extra points into Thunderspike as the damage is surprisingly relevant while leveling up, though I'm probably going to remove those soon. In fact, I think the extra points could very easily go into Ravager now. So I'm going to do that like so. I've got Apex for damage, Diminishment for defense, Unrestrained Power for increased damage while unhindered or unstoppable, which you are quite a bit of a time thanks to Soar. Now defensively, Auspicious is pretty good at building barriers, and Patient Guard gives you additional block chance. And the After Standing Still part is up way more than you'd expect it to be. Now coming down here, Potent is for the Jaguar skill synergy. Remember, Ravager is a Jaguar skill, and whenever you're using your Eagle skills, it is contributing extra damage. So you can very easily justify this to make enemies vulnerable, thus increasing your overall DPS. And then the ultimate nodes are really powerful, so you pretty much take all of them. Though in terms of both intricacy and sustenance, it's kind of to taste. So if you feel like you need more healing / more resets, take more points, otherwise take less points. Just remember that you really, really, really need Vital Strikes before your build comes together and feels good. Now, since the primary focus of this build is leveling, the Paragon Board is not going to be significantly developed. But just to give you an idea of some direction to go if you have a few points, you can come up to right here, that way you get maximum life and damage. Come all the way up, socket a glyph, such as Headhunter, or really whatever you have, take notes accordingly. You can get Spiritual and Skillful. Then for the second board, right now it's Drive, because this node seems very impactful, but this is very much a setup that's going to get respec'd later. It's not a final setup, because as a fresh 60, there are simply too few glyph options to make meaningful decisions. In fact, these nodes are honestly kind of not the best, and instead, the pathing should be over here, because the legendary node's going to be more impactful than a level 1 glyph. As you level up glyphs, and as you get more Paragon points, you'll be able to make more impactful decisions, and you should definitely deviate from this. With that said, if you want to see a more endgame optimized version of this build, I'm going to keep playing it. I'm going to keep refining stuff. I'll see what it ultimately transforms into after I've done a few more Torments. So get subscribed and keep an eye out for future videos. Also, ring that notification bell so that you have the best chance of seeing it. Now for Spirit Hall, of course, Primary Eagle. If you don't have this, one big portion of a build, which is the ability to evade around and have Storm Feathers deal insane amounts of damage, does not work. So, you should absolutely have this. For secondary, you can have Eagle. It gives a very good crit bonus that's active quite frequently. Or alternatively, you can give yourself Gorilla and take Armored Hide. That would give you Unstoppable very, very reliably. Or if you take Scourge, you can use Centipede. So honestly, I think Eagle's the best choice here. Centipede if you need healing, Gorilla if you need defenses. Last up, Mercenaries. Right now, I'm going to be honest, I don't think this is the most optimal setup. I was just leveling these Mercenaries up. I do quite like Rahir, not only for the defensive bonus from Valiance, but also Crater is really, really good. That said, I do think that you could actually swap Crater to your reinforcement skill if you want to cast it a little bit more reliably, and that would allow you to use one of the different mercenaries, but for now I need to level them all up and test them a bit more before deciding what's optimal. I will very much say that Rahir is a comfort pick, and while leveling he feels really, really good. For reinforcement, grab whoever you want. Alright, so here's my very much work in progress gear. First up, for most items, I was just trying to get life and dexterity wherever I could, and resistances would be nice, but weren't required at least yet. For the weapon, item power is king, so I simply put on the thing with the highest item power. Now for my amulet, I haven't changed this in quite a while, and that's because this is what I'm using for my rebounding aspect. If you don't have rebounding, feel free to swap up your amulet pretty much any time a new one drops. Then on my ring, something else that I'm not going to swap out too often, which is why I fully tempered it, this is where I'm running my Accursed Touch. These are the two aspects that really heavily synergize with the build. Again, remember, you want that attacks reduce evades cooldown by 1.0 seconds on your boots. But to be honest with you, the specifics of the rest of the gear don't matter in the level 1 to 60 process. Though, if you can get something with 2 sockets, I strongly recommend running rune words. For example, here I have Semgar. Every time I evade, I get 75 offering, and I then consume at least 25 of it to gain 2.5% critical strike chance for 5 seconds up to 25%. But of course, since it costs 25, and I'm generating 75, I do have a significant overflow. Since I'm spamming evade, I should have this buff up almost fully stacked most of the time. Then, second of all, in my weapon, I have Zanteb. Every time I cast an ultimate skill, I gain 150 offering, which casts Abhorrent Iron Maiden on enemies. From my experience, the exact runes you get access to while leveling is pretty darn random, so just go with whatever makes sense for your current character's progression. Then, for any remaining sockets, simply socket in dexterity gems. The higher the better, but don't worry too much about it. Oh, and as a quick reminder, don't just vendor or salvage your gear. Remember to go to the jeweler and unsocket your runes so that they don't go to waste. And so that's my work in progress Spiritborn. Personally, I found the playstyle of just dashing between enemies, then unloading a bunch of Quill Volleys on single target to be very, very satisfying. It has all of the speed of an endgame build, with the lack of gear requirements that you'd expect from a season starter. So if you have a need for speed, this is absolutely the build for you. Now defensively, it's only okay. You can't just sit in every circle and face tank everything. However, if you are applying your counterattacks properly, you should be able to deal with a significant amount of damage from enemies. Just stay out of the circles and you'll probably be okay while leveling. I think I might have died 2 total times in my leveling experience, and both of them were definitely me going, I shouldn't stand in that. That'll definitely kill me. Then sitting in it anyway, and of course, dying to standing in it. In terms of how you should level, honestly, that's up to you. But I did find this build to be especially effective in the Cuirassed Undercity. In fact, it was so effective that it kind of felt like the timer wasn't really a thing. I was absolutely blasting through stuff and had no problems at all. Though it's certainly going to be interesting to see if that experience continues as I get tributes and as I start progressing into the Torments. And as one last note, Because the Hunter has a chance to reset its cooldown, don't be afraid to use it liberally. Yes, it's an ultimate skill, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't be spamming it. And remember, you can also use the Hunter for mobility. It allows you to jump from one pack of enemies to the next pack of enemies if your evade's on cooldown, and gives you a whole bunch of hits that should help you to take your evade off of cooldown. If you really want to zoom, hit Soar, then Hunter, then Soar, and hopefully your Hunter comes off cooldown because you killed enough stuff so that you can hit Hunter then Soar again. So far, I've been having quite a bit of fun with this build, and I look forward to seeing what the optimizations bring in the future. Now, this is the point of the video where normally I'd point you to something else that I've made, which is also topical or relevant. With Vessel of Hatred, it kind of feels like Diablo 4 is an entirely new game, and nothing that I made before really fully applies. So, at the very least for now, just enjoy the end credits. And hey, if you want to see more videos like this, consider supporting over on Patreon. For as low as $1 a month, you can help make videos just like this possible. And if you do want even more Diablo content, well, head over to Maxwell.gg, where there's plenty of guides to get you into the game and teach you pretty much every aspect there is. Until that said, good luck on your journey, and I'll see you in the next one.